share screen thing and run our video, and then you guys go do your thing. I'm excited to listen.
Amber, is that you in there?
Hello, I am so sorry. I don't know why that wasn't working out.
Don't worry about it. We are here now.
Great. Do you mind if I go ahead and play with the intro video?
Yep, go for it.
Okay.
Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership and co-chair of Denver Startup Week. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. DSW has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade. And this week, we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and Rework. And our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible, our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works, people track sponsor, Exactly, and spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement to the week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage, Path, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors, all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use the hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experiences and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Hello, I'm Sal Gentili, CEO of Friday Health Plans, and we're proud to sponsor the growth track this year at Denver Startup Week. We're a company that just entered a rapid growth phase, so we felt it was particularly appropriate. When my business partner and I started Friday Health Plans 5 years ago, we knew we wanted to create a company that catered to people who bought their own health insurance. The Affordable Care Act was just getting going, and we saw an opportunity to serve a brand new market of health insurance consumers. Independent consultants, startup groups, gig workers, service industry workers, designers, creators, and other independent professionals, like many of you here today. We knew that if we built a health plan that was simple to buy, easy to use, had great customer service, and most of all was affordable, we could compete against the big insurance plans who only focus on serving big companies. After spending 5 years getting into the Colorado market and completing a successful proof of concept, we successfully closed a $50 million round of growth funding earlier this year. We're now about to expand to 3 additional states later this year, hire more than 400 employees to support our growth, and eventually be in more than 10 states by 2025. I wish each of you good luck in your startup and growth pursuits. And as you think about your upcoming health insurance needs, I hope you consider fellow growing startup Friday Health Plans. Open enrollment starts November 1st. Check us out at FridayHealthPlans.com.
Hello everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Jake Cohen, the Growth Track Chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep Denver Startup Week free and accessible for all. Thank you for joining us and have a great week.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to my session on process mapping. My name is Bree DeLisi-Zoller, and I am owner of Breezy Operations, helping small businesses save time and money by making their internal operations smarter and faster. I'm going to give you first just a little story, if you will, on why process mapping matters so much to me. So I've had quite a winding career personally, and when I first became a consultant, I was working for another firm at the time, and I was first time being a consultant. It was also a growing firm. They had a lot of new consultants working for them as well. And I had my first client engagement assigned to me, which was incredibly exciting, incredibly nerve-wracking. As a new employee and a new consultant, I wanted to make sure that I did as good of work as I possibly could. But something ended up coming up where I was verbally directed, okay, these are the steps that you're going to be following. And you're going to be telling John over here, John's going to order all of the books over here. He's got that covered. We're going to be facilitating a training with this group. So here's your client. John will order all the materials. You just coordinate setting up all of the trainings. Coordinate with the client, make sure you have all the locations set up, the timing set up, the participants set up. So I thought, okay, perfect. I can handle all of those things. So then the day of, now mind you, I'm in Denver and it is mountain time here. The training that I set up was on Eastern time zone, and I get a call from the facilitator at 7 a.m. when the session was about to start at 7:30 Eastern time, which is 5:30 my time, getting a call that the books are not there, the facilitation materials are not there, and this is a $100,000 client that is quite angry at that moment because they didn't get their books. And it turns out that there was a little gap in the process that we weren't aware of. I was not aware that I should have told John how many books to send and where to send them. I was told that he knew where to send them, and I'm not going to place blame on anyone. There's no point in placing blame. But what was missing was a clear understanding of roles and expectations, as well as who is doing what and when they're supposed to be doing them. And that is how I fell in love with the art of process mapping, because it is so simple, it's so easy to look at, and anyone can do it. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. So bear with me for a moment while I get my screen share going, and I'm just going to share a little bit of what you can expect in this session today. I am going to be setting up breakout rooms for us. So do anticipate that you are going to be, you're going to be actually participating in this a little bit. You're going to be doing some process mapping. You're going to be looking at it yourself. So plan on engaging with folks in your room as well. So just keep that in mind. This isn't one where you just kind of get to sit back and relax. Oh, good. I'm glad to see that you're excited about this, Elise. So with that, also, I know we're streaming to YouTube. So if anyone's watching this on YouTube, I invite you to come on into the Zoom room if possible. So that way you can participate in this as well. And you don't just have to sit and look at me for like 10 minutes at a time while I'm just letting everyone else do their thing. So let me just bear with me for one moment while I shift things over. If you are putting anything into the chat, just please keep in mind that we will be, I am the only person running the show here. So if, oh, there we go. All right. So if there happen to be any comments that come up while I'm in the middle of speaking, I won't necessarily be able to address them right away, but I will look at the end of each slide. And let me just make sure that I've got the right screen share going on. Okay, perfect. So we're ready to rock here. So what we're going to be going over today, this is our plan of attack. We're going to first go over our introduction and our workshop goals. I'm going to go over what process mapping is, how it can help your business, how you make a process map. We're going to practice on it. And then I'm giving you guys a toolkit so that you can take it and do it on your own with your companies. This is me, my mission. I already mentioned that, and why process mapping matters to me. This one's important. I actually use process mapping as a part of my client work. I use it to understand the current state reality. So I actually go through, let's say we've got 3 people doing the same process. I'm going to look at how each of them are doing that process individually. And then I might align that with the expectations. What does the expectation process map look like? You can also use it to develop your standard practices. So before, I don't know if any of you has seen work instructions or procedures that are pages and pages and pages of text. You don't necessarily need to have those. You could just have a process map first before you start writing all of that stuff out. You can also use it as employee training, and that's what I like to use it for, and I do that with my clients as well. Some of our goals today, I want you to understand what process mapping is used for, the elements of process mapping, give you some group practice opportunity, and then we're going to have a takeaway toolkit, as I mentioned. So you can run away with this and use it on your own. So what we have on the right here is an example of what a process map might look like. This is just super high level. Don't worry about looking too much into details or getting concerned about it just yet. I'm going to show you how to get to this point. But what process mapping is, it's a visual outline of the process. And when I say process, that is how things get done. Process map can be used to document a process from start to finish. And when I say start to finish, it is up to you to identify what that starting point is and what that finish point is. And this can include everything from responsibilities, decisions that need to be made, tasks that are happening, documents you're using, data, databases, and quite a bit more. You're going to see all the fun shapes that are available and how you can use all of those. So a process map is just a visual representation of how you do what you do at the highest level. So a process map can be used for documenting reality, as I mentioned. You can use this to help create standard processes. So let's say you're bringing on employees in your business, or maybe you just have several employees at the moment, but everyone does things a little bit differently. Creating standard processes allows you to ensure that nothing is going to get messed up, if you will. Making sure that there's the same way for everybody to do the same thing is actually quite important from a quality perspective. There's also alignment on roles and responsibilities. Who is doing what and when? Alignment on roles and responsibilities is also important because what if, I'm making an assumption that I'm supposed to be doing something, someone else makes the assumption they're supposed to be doing the same thing. What ends up happening with that redundant effort? And then also using it, as I mentioned, for new employee training. It is fabulous to have that visual walkthrough while you're actually showing them the work. And that way that new employee can go and refer to that again in the future. Process mapping can also be used to facilitate change. So this includes gap and root cause analysis. And you might be wondering what those terms are if you've never heard them before. So root cause analysis or gap analysis, that's when there is a breakdown in the process. For some reason, yes, Steph, you are going to have access to these slides. I'll send them to you. I'll send you the link at the end of the session. But a gap analysis and a root cause analysis, these are when you have a breakdown in the system and you are experiencing some sort of error, you're experiencing a quality issue, injuries, anything along those lines, or the client keeps coming back to you going, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this? That's when you use Process Map, you can actually identify what the whole line of action that needs to be taken, and then figuring out where is it that we are suffering in this process? Where is this breakdown? You can also use this to determine processes for automation tools. So let's say, for example, I have a client that I'm working with where she wants to automate most of her processes. It's mostly, she sends a whole lot of emails manually, and it's the same thing over and over again. What we did was we actually process mapped her entire client engagement process. And then we were able to take off which ones that we were able to automate and align that with an automation tool that worked best for her. And then with that, also identifying downstream impacts when adjusting a process flow. So let's say we're looking at changing a process and we want to know what kind of impact we're having. It's important to first process map what the current state is and then what the ideal state would be. If we don't do that, we might have some pretty severe unintended consequences that could result in loss of work or rework. So that's at the highest level what process mapping is used for. And you can use it for so much more. I'm actually going to show you right now how we can use this for just looking at our daily activities. So we have this example here of to snooze or not to snooze. So let's say you are using an alarm clock. I know some of us now, we're working from home all the time. It might not necessarily need an alarm clock anymore, but the alarm clock rings and you have the option here, particularly on our nice little iPhones. I don't know if you guys noticed, but right in the middle of the screen, the big button I have is snooze, and it's really hard to press that stop button on the bottom. So yes or no, am I snoozing? I have the option no, I'm not going to press snooze. I'm just going to wake up and get into my morning routine. Or I have the option, yeah, I could lay in bed for 10 more minutes, press that snooze button. Alarm clock rings 10 minutes later. I get that option again. Am I going to press snooze or am I actually going to wake up and go with my day? Now, let's say we end up we go through this cycle of pressing that snooze button over and over again. And we end up getting there like maybe 4 times. That's 40 minutes there. What are some of the downstream impacts of pressing the snooze button repeatedly? I would invite you to throw some thoughts into the chat. What might happen downstream if we keep pressing that snooze button over and over again? What could happen to our day? That depends. Let's see, every other dependable task later with each snooze. Yes, push each of those 10 minutes more off. All right, so you've got missed meetings, you're late to work, absolutely. You get a speeding ticket, throw off your whole morning routine, you could lose your job. Yes, absolutely. There are some pretty intense downstream impacts here. Some other things that might happen is that you might rush and you could forget something. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. You get halfway down your road and then you got to turn around and come back and you've wasted even more time. It also could impact your reputation. Let's say you're late for a meeting, you're late for a client, whatever that might be, or at work. Could have some downstream effects there. And then also, one thing to point out is that each time we press that snooze button for 10 minutes, we're not actually getting restful sleep. From a sleep perspective, we're not gaining any additional rest. We're just laying there. Our brain is actually still active and it can't get back into that sleep where we're getting more energy. So that means if we press that snooze button 4 times, not only are we having all of those downstream impacts, but we're also just wasting time for 40 minutes if we press that snooze button 4 times. Thank you all for including some great examples in the chat there. I appreciate that. So that's just a very high level process map of what happens in the morning when we're waking up. Now, why should I bother from a work perspective? So there are some risks involved with making changes or just making assumptions about how we're doing what we're doing. So some of these risks, we have unchallenged assumptions. Let's say that we continue operating the same way every single day and we don't realize that we have a huge gap in our process. We make an assumption that someone else knows what they're doing. Like the assumption that I knew to tell John to order those facilitation books. We could have unrecognized process gaps that don't become apparent until we suffer rework or loss of work. And then there's also those unclear roles and expectations. And the flip side of these risks are the outcomes. We've got that rework, loss of work. We could have loss of customers or clients if that impacts their experience. And then there's also employee disengagement. I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that feeling of not being supported by your company. It really makes a difference when we prepare our employees to be successful by making it clear to them about what they should be doing and when they should be doing it. Otherwise, if they don't feel as though they're set up for success and then they experience those failures, if they experience those moments of screwing up a big client engagement or the product or quality suffers, they beat themselves up as a result of that. And that could also impact how they feel about working for the company. And all of that, by the way, that's just dollars lost. To make that real clear with the bottom line, all rework or loss of work is lost money. Losing customers, obviously that's losing money. And then employee disengagement, it actually costs about a quarter of an employee's salary to rehire, retrain, and get them up to speed, just for a frame of reference with what the bottom line impact is there. Now, this is, I do believe my husband is here, so he's going to recognize this example. So we have a little process map example here, and I'm going to put you guys into a little investigative mode to understand what the process breakdown is in here. So I'm going to actually tell the story here on the previous slide before you have too much of a chance to look into that one. So, and I promise, Corey, by the way, this is not going to be an I told you so thing. I'm not going to bring this back home. We are good. But there was an interesting process gap that happened in our home recently, where there was an issue with someone, not going to say who, leaving chapstick in their pocket because they had functional pockets in their pants, if you will. If anyone wears pants that are made for women, you know, generally there are no functional pockets in there, so we usually don't put things in our pockets. And we both do the laundry in our home, just depending on who recognizes that the laundry bin is full. They'll be the ones to go and take the laundry downstairs and do that whole cycle of laundry typically. So I'm going to put you guys into breakout rooms and I'll share this slide with you. And I'm going to invite you to identify where is the process breakdown. Not only that, I'm also going to invite you, I have 3 questions to go over. I'll put these into the chat so that you can, let's see. So this is I want to make clear, this is the same household, joint laundry baskets, and these are 2 people. So the person in green is one individual and the person in orange is another individual. And I put the context in there for who has functional pockets and who doesn't have functional pockets. So let me just get all of these questions pulled in here. I've got 3 questions. All right, so I threw those in there for you. You'll still be able to see this chat box when you're in there. I'll also be able to share my screen when I get you guys into the breakout rooms. So let me build out those breakout rooms and get ready. We've got, let's see, 4 to 5 participants per room at the moment. That's perfect. So I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to just do a quick introduction of yourselves and look at what are the breakdowns in this process. What are the potential assumptions made by either party? How have their previous experiences potentially influenced their processes? And I'll let you guys take it away. All right, looks like we've got some folks back. We're still just waiting on room 2 to join us. They'll be here within the next 15 seconds. And we'll see what you guys came up with. All right, welcome back, everybody. So I would love to know, what did we come up with here? So I'm going to go over our first question here. What are some potential assumptions by either party that you might be able to come up with? Feel free, you can either take yourself off of mute or enter your responses into the chat box.
I'll jump in.
Yeah, thank you.
So an assumption by green is that since green does not have functional pockets and therefore cannot store things in the pockets, then nobody has things that might be in the pockets.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Any other assumptions there? Or potential assumptions, I should say. All right, one other assumption could be that perhaps orange believes that everybody checks pockets, for example, before they put the laundry in the wash. How have potentially their previous experiences influenced their individual processes? Any thoughts there? Feel free to enter your responses into the chat box or just take yourself off of mute.
Well, a bad experience in the past will change your behavior and make you check for pockets.
Yes, so orange, yeah, Jamie's got it too. Yeah, orange has left stuff in their pockets before. So maybe they've, to your point, changed their future processes to always check their pockets. Absolutely. All right. Now, what are the actual breakdowns in the process that results in chapstick stains on the clothes? Feel free again in the chat box or take yourself off of mute. What are the breakdowns that we have in this process that you were able to identify in our root cause gap analysis here? Yep, okay, so we've got not checking pockets, only relying on my experiences to inform future behavior. The processes are different for each one. Yes, absolutely. So what we've since done, since this is a real life example, is that we have merged our two processes. So orange makes an effort to check their pockets before putting it into the laundry bin. However, green has now added into their process of a quality check, if you will, of making sure to double check the pockets before putting all the clothes into the washer. So that's just a fun example. I hope you guys found some lightheartedness in that one of how process mapping can actually apply to the way that we do work in our home as well, in addition to the workplace. So I'm going to go over some of our standard process map symbols that we have here. The top three, oh, thank you, Jamie. Yes, Parenting 101, definitely. So standard process mapping symbols, the top three are the ones that you generally see the most when you're doing process mapping. So that sort of oblong one, that's a terminator, which means start or stop. You're going to have that at both the start and the end of your process. And that's how you also identify what is your start process, or how do you know your process has started, and how do you know your process is over? And you're going to build that within sort of your constraints of your process map. There are decisions that are involved, and that will generally result in 2 to 3 separate arrows of what can happen as a result of that decision. And then our rectangular boxes are for, it depends on what your organization calls them. It could be a task, it could be a step, process, or operation are the number of terms you might use for that. There are also a number of other great images that you might use for alternate processes, manual inputs, documents, multiple documents, if there's a database, data, or a delay. And My fun tip is in PowerPoint, if you use PowerPoint or Word, you can build out your process maps in PowerPoint or Word. And they have, when you go under shapes to add a shape, if you scroll down, there's actually a section with process map. And I'll just say process at the top. But you can actually hover over each of the shapes before you select them. And there will be a word that pops up that says terminator or decision, so that you know which one you're picking. And you can see they have a number of more options than these ones here. These are the most popular ones that are used. So highly recommend checking that out. And then also you can Google process map shapes. That's another one. And then I also like to have, we all have our individual ways of doing this, but how we indicate a breakdown when we're trying to demonstrate where the breakdown is or where the gap is in our process. I personally do this by doing this outline that's dotted and red around it. Now, it also depends if you have people who are visually impaired, that might not work for them. You might want to put slashes through it or something along those lines to visually indicate that there is a breakdown. You could also just put one of those big old X's over it to indicate what a breakdown is. But these are your standard process mapping symbols that you'll see out there. And when we're building our process maps, and let's say we've got multiple people involved. So this is a triathlon example, and I've got two different ways that we can show this as a process map. First is what we call a swim lane diagram. So in a swim lane diagram, as you can see, we've got 3 levels there on the left. We've got role or person 1, role or person 2, and then role or person 3. And let's say, so we're on a triathlon team together, and each person takes one leg of the triathlon. So individual number 1 swims, followed by individual number 2 who goes on the bike, followed by individual number 3 who goes on the run. And then it is up to individual number 1 to then pop that champagne bottle as soon as person number 3 crosses that finish line, because triathlons are very difficult. So that's the swim lane way to visually show that. Another way that you can do it is color coding. And as you can see on the right-hand side here, we have 3 different colors indicating with this color key down at the bottom, individual 1, individual 2, and individual 3. And then that corresponds to the boxes up top as to who is doing what. So this is the same exact process shown 2 different ways. And it totally depends on you and your preferences and what, how you would like to visually represent what is happening for your operation. So those are process mapping 101, if you will. And here are some basics on when you're looking to start process mapping. So this picture that I have here, this is something that I did with one of my clients. We just sat down over coffee and wrote this out on a piece of paper. That is what I would suggest doing before even trying to do anything on on PowerPoint or in, we've got some fabulous tools out there that you might be able to use. Just start writing things down first, because it's going to change. I want to make that very clear. The first time you do a process map, it doesn't matter how many times you do it, it will always change, because we're making assumptions. And it turns out when we go to verify that those assumptions are incorrect. So just writing it out is perfect. I highly recommend it to have each party who has actions on that process map to be involved, so that you can validate with them what their activities are in that process or in that operation. Clarify and adjust. You're going to be doing that continuously with your process map. You're going to clarify, is this correct? And then you're going to make an adjustment to the process map. When I'm working with my clients and we're going through process mapping exercises, on average, we redo process maps 4 to 5 times, because things change and they're incredibly complex sometimes. And then finally, we need to verify the process map in real life. So that means taking that process map and actually watching people do what is said on there and verifying that we have it correct. It's all well and good to do it in a conference room, but that's nothing compared to real life, and you might forget something. So I highly recommend doing it in person as well, and watching people go through the process. That's particularly effective in manufacturing operations or where people are interacting with a client or with a customer, just those more physical things. It's a little different with people who are just doing things on their computer all day. And then we need to create some boundaries when we're developing our process map. So we need to specify our goals. Why are we doing this? What is the purpose for doing this? Where do we want to be when we're done with our process map? You want to define what that start and stop moment are. So those terminators, if you will, are very important to make sure that we're not including anything outside of that, including all of the parties involved, getting input and output alignment. So what is going into the process and what is the result out of the process? That's not necessarily the same thing as the terminators. The terminators are what starts it and what ends it, not necessarily what's going into the process and what's coming out of the process, if you will. And then determining the level of detail necessary. So how much detail do you need to include? So going back to, for example, that laundry one that I had showed you guys, I wasn't saying, put a 1/4 cup of detergent and a 1/2 cup of OxyClean. I wasn't going through all of those very specific steps because they weren't relevant. Make sure that you only have relevant information in your process map, and you don't need to get down into the nitty-gritty unless it's a part of a crucial part of the process. All right, so now we're going to practice again, and we're going to get into our breakout rooms again. And what I invite you, I was trying to think of what's a shared experience that we've all had that involves interacting with others, so we can build a shared process map. And the one that I could think of that might be the most relevant for many of us is the best Zoom networking event that you've gone to. So we have been on a lot of Zoom over the last 1.5 years. I am sure you guys have been a part of some really good Zoom networking events and some not so good Zoom networking events. I want you to think about, did the facilitator prepare all of the people in the group? Did they send emails beforehand, or did they present things on the front end? What did they do to support the process? Were there talking points and questions? How many minutes did the facilitator have you in the breakout rooms? How many participants were in the breakout rooms? Did participants take the lead in the breakout rooms, or maybe someone was assigned to be the lead? And then was contact information shared, and when was that shared? I can't tell you how many Zoom networking things I went to, and the information wasn't shared with everybody. And that was a little bit of a downfall after investing that hour chatting with people. So what I'm going to provide to you guys, and I'll give you the links to all of this in just a moment. What I'm going to provide to you is both that previous slide and this slide here for some high level starting points for you, where we have the Zoom meeting starting terminator and the ending terminator. I also included just 2 parties in here. So I've got the facilitator party in blue, and then I have the participant process step in the peach color, if you will. I have some example tasks that you might want to include in your process map for both parties. Some of them are a little jokey, and I hope that you don't actually include them in there. What I would suggest, you can just copy the shape, paste it, and change the text in there, and then add arrows as you go through. And this is just going to be a high-level walkthrough for how you can go about building your own process map. So let me grab you the link to make sure that you can get there. All right, so this is the link to those 2 slides. And when you open that up, go to File and make a copy for yourself if you are using Google Drive regularly in your business, and that's no problem. Or you have the option to download it as a PowerPoint to your desktop. So I'll give you all a moment, and that's the link there. Go to File, make a copy, or you can download it. What I'm going to do is I'll put you guys into breakout rooms, and whoever has a device easily accessible that can put things up on the screen, I will enable you to have the capability to share your screen so that you all can build this process map together. So only one person in each group needs to share their screen. And I would appreciate whoever is willing to volunteer to do that. And then everyone else just sort of give your input of what is the best Zoom networking meeting process. So just give me a moment here I'm gonna hang on just for a second before I build our breakout rooms. Let me know if there's any issues in the chat there. All right, awesome, good to hear. Okay, so I'm going to throw you guys into breakout rooms. And I'll give you, it doesn't need to be perfect, but I'll give you guys about 10 minutes if that works for you. And I'll see you all shortly. It was fun to see that you guys all stayed in there for the full time. So I'm sure that means that you were working quite hard on your process map. Let me go back to sharing my PowerPoint here. There we go. So any thoughts, questions? I know that was not enough time. And that's kind of just what we're working with here. And if you have any questions, feel free to take yourself off mute or throw them into the chat box before we close out for the day and go over final steps. And oh, good, Elise, I'm glad. All right, so I'm sure you're wondering, we made our process map and now what? What do I do with this? So let's say you're looking at it from an efficiency and a root cause gap analysis process. So you want to identify in there, what are the bottlenecks? What are the redundant steps that we might have? Are there any steps that can be eliminated in this process? Or do we need to add in a step for quality control? Maybe we're having a number of escapes on our product that we have, and we need to add in an additional measure to make sure that we're all good. We also have here for implementing a new system or a platform. So let's say you're going over process mapping because you want to either shift platforms or you want to implement a new platform or a system. First, through the process map, you can identify which steps need to be automated. And then by that mechanism in itself, you can then validate if the new system you want can actually automate those steps. Sometimes systems aren't everything that we want them to be, so it's important for us to understand what it is exactly that needs to be automated. And then also identifying the manual tasks to support those systems. Often not everything can be automated, so we still need to have some manual aspect to it as well. And then finally, if we're using it as a standard process or training or roles and responsibilities, using it as a supplement for on-the-job training so that employees have something to refer to in the future, keeping it in an easy to access location for everybody, and then making sure that you have a versioning record and that you update and an update schedule on there. So verifying on an annual basis, is this still the right process? Is it still working this way? So I'm going to include in the chat box here a link to this whole presentation so that you guys can take that home with you. So with that, we have our, what I would recommend is when you go into that document, again, go to File and you can make a copy or download. Feel free to shoot me an email if you need to. So some final tips here. Practice makes perfect. And also, I just want to say your process map will never be correct or perfect on the first draft. That's just the way this is. When I do this for a living, that's still not the case because other people and other functions are involved. Make it a team activity and challenge your assumptions. All too often, we make assumptions about how things go, particularly with teams. We want to make sure that we are challenging those. And then when all else fails and you're confused about what to do, you can either Google it. Google's a fabulous resource for process mapping, or just give me a call and I'm happy to help you out. But with that, we're like right on time here, folks. Thank you so much for having me. This is my information here. If you ever need to reach out to me, I would be more than happy to chat with you. And I'll take a look at the questions here. I know we do need to jump off shortly, and I'll do my best to answer those very quickly. Okay, so we have from Elise, how do you show a funnel slowdown in a process map? So what I personally like to do is that I would highlight that box in yellow or put a yellow border around it, indicating that it's a slowdown impacting the rest of the process. There is also a delay image in process maps, the process map images as well. It kind of, I don't know what to call this shape, but this is what it looks like. So you could do that to show where it's slowing down. And then do I have any good books on process mapping? I don't have any good books on process mapping. That's a really good question. I have always been an online course kind of person. And where I can say there's good free courses, I would recommend Coursera. If you just type in process mapping in Coursera, you can just get a free course on how to do it. Also, LinkedIn Learning has some good ones if you're a LinkedIn Premium member as well. But we are at time here, folks. Thank you all so much. Yep, course. Here, I'll type it in. Course. Yep, there we go. Thank you, Elise, for getting that in there. Perfect. All right. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for coming.